to win some prizes. So it looks like it pulls up the app. You enter your name, start. I'm going to type my answer. Okay. So I'll just leave that code up for anyone else. If you want to play this, it's kind of fun. So I'm playing this just to test it out, and it's showing icons, and I need to say what the icon is. So that's kind of fun. That actually might be fun to use in the classroom as well. I'll have to remember that. We have about 2 more minutes, and then we will get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to this session. If you've just joined us, there's a little quiz here. Use the QR code with your phone if you have it handy. Enter the code and play the quiz. Enter a chance for win some prizes. Logo trivia. This will be an interactive session, so get your chat opened up and ready to participate. And as we're waiting here just 1 more minute, our presenter would like to ask you if you will enter into the chat what courses do you teach that are writing intensive? What courses do you teach that are writing intensive? So if you would like to participate in that, please put that in the chat, and our presenter then will have a little bit of better feel for the room. Okay, we've got some responses coming in the chat. We have English 101, English 102. We've got History 108, History 109, another English 101/100, English 101, English 102, some more English. There's an English 161. So yeah, we appreciate that very much. All right, I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to introduce our presenter today, Julia Laffoon-Jackson, a graduate of the First KOOL Academy and one of KCTC's earliest winners of the Blackboard Exemplary Course Award, is an English professor and the head of the Liberal Arts and Social Sciences Division at Hopkinsville Community College. While her favorite topic of the 4 areas on the exemplary course rubric is course design, she empathizes with her colleagues concerning the writing-intensive nature of many courses and is focusing in today's section on practical tips for grading papers online. My name is Melissa Green. I will be monitoring the chat. Appreciate everyone coming out this morning. And we have one more course, BAS 270. So I appreciate everyone, and thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, everyone, for writing in the chat what courses you teach that are writing intensive. So, Lorraine, I did not know that the Business 270 was a writing intensive course. So that's interesting to know. Of course, I knew history was, all the history courses and the English courses. And if anyone joined just a moment ago and you did not write in the chat what courses you teach that are writing intensive, please go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I've titled my session Life Rings for Instructors Drowning in paper grading, because I have been there. I'm a writing teacher. I'm also the chair of the Liberal Arts and Social Sciences division at Hopkinsville, and so I know exactly how you feel. Um, Writing intensive courses just require a lot of grading, and so this session, it's designed for those of us who teach these writing intensive courses, how to get through the grading load and keep our sanity. Well, that part may be questionable, but anyway, we're going to, hopefully these life rings will at least keep you from feeling like you're drowning. Some of these life rings are equally helpful and maybe even more helpful for our students who also feel like they're drowning in writing assignments. So doesn't that look just like us? I thought it was a good likeness. We're just sort of floating around going, I've got too many papers to grade. How am I going to survive? Help, help. So hopefully this will help you and your students too. Now our students in our classes, they often feel like they are drowning well, they feel like they are encountering a bunch of wild animals, which are also known as essays and journals and research papers. Oh my. There's just so much. The sheer volume alone of the writing that they have to do in their different courses can cause them to quickly lose track of what is due when and how it's to be done. And so they too feel like they're drowning in a flood of writing assignments. So this PowerPoint, since I shared it instead of sharing it from my screen, it's not doing the putting in at different times like I wanted it to do. The captions aren't coming in at different times. So I'll work with that. All right, so I have a question for you before I move on to the first life ring. How many of you teach classes on campus as well as online? I know all of you teach classes online, but how many of you also teach on campus or hybrid? If you would just put in your chat, me or I do, just want to feel for how many of you. Okay. All right. So it looks like several of you do. Okay. So I do as well. I teach hybrid as well as online classes. And so this first life ring is for those of you who teach in both formats or all three formats. And that is, have your students submit all assignments on Blackboard, even your on-ground students. Putting all of your assignment instructions on Blackboard and requiring your students to submit their assignments on it instead of in person, in class, or by email. And what this particular life ring does is it improves your students' chances for success. And it does so in at least 4 ways. There's probably others too, but one way is that the students know what is due and when, since the assignment and the due date are both stated in Blackboard. Now you may notice here that on these document pages, I've put in due dates that, sorry about that, my watch decided it needed to talk to me. So I've put in due dates on the reading assignments, even though it's not something that's graded. And I made it look like Blackboard does when there is something graded. That's just because I want them to think, oh, yes, I must do this now. But anyway, this putting that information lets them know what's due when. And then another advantage is that another way that putting your assignments on Blackboard improves your students' chances for success is that they can review the assignment requirements and look at examples as often as they need to, instead of having to ask you to state them again in class, or instead of them having to write you an email and say, how did you say to do this? Or what exactly am I supposed to do? It's right there for them to review as often as they need to. And then a third way putting your assignments on Blackboard improves your students' chances for success is that they know what they're doing at all times throughout the semester, or they know how they're doing at, well, let's see, I think I skipped one. Yeah. They know how they're doing at all times throughout the semester, because they can go to the grade book and they can see what they've done, where they are in the course. And of course, you don't need a physical grade book. Students don't have to wonder or ask you, how am I doing in this course? Am I making an A? Am I making a B? Am I passing? They can look at it all the time and find out. And then finally, a fourth way, but definitely not the final way, that putting all of your assignments on Blackboard, including those for your on-ground students, improves their chances for success is that they become better prepared when they inevitably now have to take online courses. So in the not too distant past, students could go through their entire associate's degree and take everything on ground. Of course, the pandemic changed all of that. And so by putting your assignments and making them submit their work online in Blackboard, no matter whether they're on ground or online, that just prepares them for fully online classes. When we had to pivot over to remote teaching for all of our classes back in March 2020, my on-ground students were already accustomed to working online. They were used to submitting all of their assignments in Blackboard. I had also told them that if we had to close down for any reason, we would just meet at the same time, same days in our Blackboard Collaborate room, and I had shown them how to do it. So they didn't miss a beat when we had to do that emergency pivot. And they were so thankful and so appreciative that I had prepared them for success in the online mode of delivery. Of course, when I had wrote this in 2019, I was thinking snowstorm. I was not thinking pandemic, but it worked. Okay, so before I show you life ring number 2, does anybody have questions about number 1? If so, if you have questions as we go along, just put them in the chat, and Melissa is moderating the chat for me. So, all right, so life ring number 2. Let me preface it by saying that in the past, whenever I would lament to friends or colleagues in disciplines that are not writing intensive about how I spent all of my evenings, all of my weekends grading papers, their typical response was, well, if you didn't give your students so much work to do, you wouldn't have so much to grade. Of course, that did not help. And in fact, it perturbed me because I couldn't get them to sympathize with me over how much I, as an English instructor, am required to teach and assess, how vast the learning outcomes are in writing courses. I couldn't even get them to understand or empathize with me about how long it takes to read, mark, and comment on just one essay, much less hundreds. So you may be surprised to see that life ring number 2 is reduce the number of writing assignments you give. So ultimately, I ended up taking a good hard look at every single one of my assignments, writing assignments as well as other types of assessments, and realized that a couple of them were duplicative and a couple of them could be submerged into other assignments. I had 35 total assignments, writing and otherwise. And I cut it down from 35, no, I had 35 assignments. I cut that down to 30, and that does not sound like a big deal, but it actually was. So, you know, I don't have a hard and fast rule of thumb for you about how many writing assignments you should have, but I think a good rule of thumb in a 16-week course is about 2 assignments per week. Now, notice I said assignments, not writings. Even in an English course, all of your assignments don't need to be and shouldn't be all writing assignments. Any comments or questions about that? Okay.
I don't see anything in the chat so far.
All right. Okay, so so that point about that they don't all need to be writing assignments and shouldn't all be writing assignments leads me to life ring number 3, and that is to change your essay questions to quizzes that Blackboard grades for you. So after I reduced my number of assignments, I counted up how many I had to grade versus how many Blackboard graded automatically. And it was something like Blackboard 5, poor little me 25. And I decided that was totally unfair. No wonder I felt like I was drowning. I really was drowning. So I restructured this by changing the essay questions on my quizzes into multiple choice questions. And I ended up with a much more reasonable amount of grading. So now it's Blackboard grades 15 assignments and I grade 15 assignments. That's a lot more doable. Any questions or comments about that life ring?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment, and I think that is brilliant. Okay. Thank you for that idea.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. All right, then let's see. The 4th life ring is to set up automated feedback for your quizzes. So when you create multiple choice or true-false quizzes, it's a good idea to set up automated feedback as well. Automated responses are given automatically after students answer quiz questions, so they learn immediately why they are right or why they are wrong. It takes a little bit of time on the front end for you to set up these automated responses, but then you save yourself way more time on the back end because you don't have students emailing you saying, I'm sure that number 3 was correct and it said I was wrong, you know. So this way they know exactly where they went wrong. And also too, if I allow them to take the quiz more than once, instead of just telling them what the correct answer is, I will tell them where to find the correct answer instead, because I don't want them to just go, oh, okay. I want them to look it up and see where, you know, what the actual answer is. And so I tell them where to go in the course to find that answer. Any questions or comments about that life ring? Okay, so now that I've covered how to save yourself time with automated grading, I will throw out some life rings to save you time on writing assignments that you do have to grade yourself, so that you don't end up like this poor guy. And so these next parts are going to sound like they're just for writing instructors, which most of you are, but this fifth life ring will really, I think, help history instructors, business instructors, anyone who does writing intensive assignments that they don't require a rough draft and a revised draft and a final draft. I'm going to recommend that you try this out. So life ring number 5. Well, let me just say this first. When I grade rough drafts, I don't grade them on areas such as wording or grammar. Instead, I grade based upon whether or not the student has followed the instructions of the assignment. For example, if one of my instructions for the argument essay assignment requires that the essay cover a minimum of 3 supporting reasons, I would look to see if their rough draft followed that instruction. And so my feedback consisted primarily of repeating or rewording whichever directions they had not followed, or they had just done it incorrectly, or they had omitted to do so. And then one day, a couple of summers ago, I had this light bulb aha moment that led me to this next slide. Life ring number 5. Have students do self-assessments on their rough drafts. So I realized that if I gave my students yes, no, or true, false questions for each of my instructions, then they could self-assess their rough drafts. So here's an example of a couple of questions from a self-assessment. Question 1, my first sentence is an attention grabber that makes everyone want to keep on reading, even people not interested in this topic. And they just have to answer true or false. And then the second, they have to look at their paper and assess. And then question number 2, my introduction ends with a clear thesis that states which career out of 3 is best and why. This is only worth, I think it's only worth 10 points. And I give 1,000 points in my writing courses. So but what it does is it makes them really look at what they've done in their paper and see if they actually have followed the instructions. And I've found that my students are honest with themselves and me. And then I've had, when I first did this, a few of them confessed. I mean, they came up to me sheepishly and said that they changed their paper when they read the questions and corrected themselves as they were doing this self-assessment so that they could earn a higher grade on the self-assessment. And my response was, well, that's great. That's the whole point of self-assessment. It's to see where you need to improve and then do it, not just go, oh, well, I didn't do that. Too bad, so sad. You know, the whole purpose of self-assessment is to see what you need to do to make things better. Any questions or comments on that one before we move on?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, although I'd like to make a comment. I think you gave me a great idea about how to get the students to grade their video skills before they submit them, and maybe we'll have less referrals where we have to grade them again because we're drowning in grading.
Yes, right. Yeah. And so, of course, on the automated responses, their answers should all be true, that they have indeed done these things. And that's a great point, Melissa. Any kind of presentation or assignment that you require them to do, if you can get them to self-assess first to see if they have followed the instructions, that's going to save you a whole lot of time, because then you're not having to grade it twice. Again, this is one of those things that Blackboard grades for you, and so that makes your job easier.
We do have a question. Jamie Jones from
Okay.
SK. Is the self-assessment in addition to or in lieu of a peer review?
No, it's in addition to. So I have them do the self-assessment first after they've written their initial draft, and then that leads me to her question. Leads me to the next life ring, which is how do you handle the revised draft. So like all of you who are writing teachers, I have them do a rough draft, a revised draft, and a final draft. So the rough draft, they self-assess. The revised draft, they peer review. So that's life ring number 6. Give guided questions and models, and then use a rubric to grade peer reviews of their revised drafts. So I assign my students to small groups and have them do peer reviews of each other's revised drafts in a discussion board. Oh, and by the way, speaking of discussion boards, you shouldn't feel that you have to give a discussion board assignment every week. Just give them when it makes sense to do so. In my discussion, well, I have them do a discussion board for each revised draft, and then I have them do an introductory discussion board and a close of the course discussion board. So 5 discussion boards is what I give. But anyway, in my discussion boards, I have the students post their essays and claim their role. So they either have to claim the big picture role or the details role. And sometimes I will say, so-and-so, you take the details role, or so-and-so, you take the big picture role, because by that point I can already tell who's more geared for a particular role. But a lot of times too, I just say, okay, in your group, you have to have at least one details person. You have to have at least one big picture person. First people to claim the role gets it, and then what they have to do is they post their revised essay, and then they download whichever role they have claimed. And so when they write their response to each of the people in their small group, they have to address all of the questions that are on the role sheet that they claim. So here's an example. If they claim the big picture role, then they have to write, their feedback has to consist of 2 complete paragraphs addressing all of these questions. So they have to address questions about the content and questions about the organization. If they chose the small details row, then they have to answer questions about the grammar, mechanics, and they have to answer questions about citations. In addition, on that sheet, that row sheet, it also gives them an example of valuable, specific, big picture feedback or details feedback, whichever role they've chosen, so that they can see, okay, this is what good feedback looks like. It doesn't just say, oh, looks good to me or sounds good to me, and then, that's not helpful to their classmates at all. So giving them an example helps them so much. And then having those guided questions for them helps them see and know what they need to address in their feedback. And then I just use a super simple rubric to grade their peer reviews quickly. So all I'm grading them on is, did the student post the assignment and claim a feedback role? And then did they give lots of specific valuable feedback to each member of their group? I put them in groups of 4 typically. So they don't have a huge amount of peers' papers to give feedback on. But you can see that my grading part is really simple. Now, and one other thing that I do, that's how I grade their peer review. But in the feedback, the overall feedback for each student, I also quickly jot down the page numbers in my Blackboard course that they need to review, because I saw that I do look at their papers, their individual papers as well myself. And so I'll just quickly jot down my Blackboard page numbers that they need to go back and refer to before they revise again and submit their final draft. All right, any questions or comments on that life ring?
I'm not seeing any comments or questions in the chat so far.
Okay. All right, so before I give you the last life ring, which concerns grading the final draft, I'd like to share with you the evolution of my grading. I used to feel like I was literally drowning in papers, and I was fairly certain that I spent far more time grading some students' papers than they had spent writing them. In the early years of my teaching career, I would painstakingly mark every single error on their final drafts and write a ton of feedback and then manually calculate the grades. And I did all of this in the vain hope that my students would read and apply my great gems of wisdom on their next paper. But what did my students do? Well, they just looked at the bottom line, which is the grade, and they glanced at the sheer number of marks, concluded the grade must be right, and never even bothered to read my great gems of wisdom. So then in my middle years of my teaching career, I switched over to grading by rubrics. And while that made calculating the grade easier, I was still going to great pains to mark every error and write a ton of feedback. And as you know, that's a pain online, especially to do that. And again, what did my students do? Well, they looked at the rubric to see where they had earned their points and where they didn't. And they perhaps skimmed over my general feedback, but they didn't even bother to open up all those little comments that were throughout, in the margins. They didn't open any of them. And so once again, all of my gems of wisdom wasted. So now in the last few years of my teaching career, I've discovered this 7th and final life ring. And that is to give video feedback and use a rubric to grade final drafts. Rubrics are super easy to set up in Blackboard Ultra. You used to be limited. Okay, why is my page not moving on? Let's see. Okay, we used to be limited to 10 criteria, but I think it's now 15 criteria. So this shows 10. I've separated out my in-text citations, my last criteria. So I now have 11 criteria that I use. Number 10 is the in-text citations, and number 11 is the works cited page. And my final drafts are worth 150 points each because to me, it's super important that they do those citations and that works cited page correctly. What I do then, and I share that rubric with them ahead of time, a few pages back. I let them know, okay, this is how I'm going to grade it. So then when I grade it, it's just a matter of click, click, click through the rubric. And I can quickly give just a very quick comment. I've set it up as a trichotomous rubric so that it's just yes, some, or no. Yes, they did these things. They did some of it, or they did not do any of it. So that makes it very simple. And then I can just write in the feedback under that criteria what they left out or what they did wrong. Or what they did great, I can put that all in. Concerning the video feedback, so what I do is I click on the feedback icon, click on the little camera, and do a quick. I think you're limited to 3 minutes anyway. It's not, you don't have a whole lot of time, but I just use that to give them a quick 1 or 2 message telling the student what he or she did well, and giving a couple of areas to work on overall for future improvement. And really, I just do only 1 or 2 because whatever's the biggest thing, whatever's their biggest issue, because really the human brain cannot absorb 15 different types of errors that they've got to work on. But it can absorb, okay, my teacher said I've got major issue with whatever, and so they can focus on that. I also use it just to say, you did a great job. And one thing too, because I'm able to give written feedback under each criteria of the rubric, I don't do a video recording for every single student in every single class on every single final draft. I just sort of randomly choose which ones I'm going to give that video feedback to. If I think a student needs extra encouragement, then I'll give them video feedback. Or if I know that a particular student really worked hard on this particular assignment, they kept going back to the writing center, and they put in a whole lot of extra time and effort, then I'll do a quick little video to praise them for all of the hard work that they did.
Julia?
Okay. Yes.
Catherine Woods has a question.
Sure.
Do you use the record feature in Blackboard Ultra to provide video feedback or some other system? So I think you just went over that. That was really helpful to see that. I've actually never seen that recording function on there. I never really looked for it. It's really great. The other
It
question
is.
that Catherine Woods has is, does that feature in Blackboard provide auto-generated captions?
Um, I I don't think it does. That feature may be added now, but the last time I did it, it was not there. Okay, so um, looks like somebody said a comment about
Yeah,
adding.
John, are you seeing this? Google's Chrome browser will activate closed captioning by setting the preferences. Good to know.
That is good to know. Okay. So now, I mean, this life ring alone has made my grading less time consuming. But the best part is that none of my efforts are wasted. My students look at the rubric, they see where they earned points and where they didn't. And when I give them a video feedback message, they absolutely love it, because it's a personal message from me to them specifically, individually. And it's very short, and it gives them a couple of actions that they can immediately put into practice for increased success. Um, Actions that sound doable to them instead of overwhelming. And so that, um, that increases that student-teacher interaction that's often hard to come by in an online course. And it just makes for more engaged, happier students when they have that feedback. Okay, so over the last few years, I had been using some of these life rings that I presented here, and they've allowed me to come up for breaths of air from time to time. However, it wasn't until I put all 7 of them together and started doing all 7 of them simultaneously that I finally felt I was no longer drowning. Putting all 7 life rings together effectively made a life raft for me. And so now I'm breathing far more easily, and my students are too. And my hope is that today I've pulled you and your students onto the life raft as well. So thank you for joining me. This is my contact information. And any final questions before we go? We've got about 5 minutes.
Any questions in the chat? Just go ahead and jump in there.
Let's see. Let me turn on my camera so I can see the chat.
I'm just trying to figure how I would implement something like this. It sounds really great and everything, but I'm just trying to see how I can implement something like this in chemistry.
So you can definitely embed the self-assessment activity into chemistry courses, Raymond, but I don't know, specifically other things that you could do, but I'd be happy to look, to meet with you one-on-one sometime virtually and look at your course and see if we can come up with some ways to help you out. And let's see, someone asked, Jamie Jones from Sky, I think, asked how many essays do you assign in a writing class? So we assign 3 rough drafts, 3 revised drafts, 3 final drafts in our writing classes. Let's see, how long did you say the recording feedback is limited to? I believe it's 3 minutes, but mine are always only 1 or 2 minutes long, so I've not reached the limit, the time limit. Kim suggested video feedback for lab reports. Yes. Thank you, Lori. Any other comments or questions before we go? We've got 3 minutes. Oh, Laura says the video feedback feature is 5 minutes. And by the way, I noticed Kim's on here, Kim Caleb's. I was in the first KOOL Academy group, and Kim was the one who hooked me on to that video feedback feature in Ultra, because on one of my first assignments in the KOOL Academy, she gave me video feedback, and I just fell in love with Kim at that point, because it was a personal message just for me. And I just felt like, oh, she cares about me. You know, she's rooting for me. She's encouraging me. And just her doing that made me realize if I do that with my students, my online students, they're going to be a lot more engaged and willing to work too.
Can I jump in, Julia?
Yes.
We have something fun to announce. Raymond is our random attendance winner. He has won a syllabus travel coffee mug, and the systems office will be reaching out to get a hold of you so that they can get you that travel coffee mug. So congratulations to Raymond. And it looks like Laura has a hand.
Okay, go ahead.
I should say thank you very much. And I loved the video feedback feature as well. But when I first tried to use it, the record screen basically took up your entire computer monitor. So I got very, very frustrated because you couldn't see the students' work while you were recording. But I just checked it, which is how I knew it went to 5 minutes, because I really wanted to use it, and they have fixed that issue. Now it's just a very small box. So if anybody's tried it in the past and thought that was an issue, we're good to go.
We are, yes. All right. Congratulations, Raymond, on winning. I think we have time for one more question or comment. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining me, and I hope you have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Okay, just a little housekeeping tips. Go ahead and exit out of this room, return back to the course just so that we can get our recording stopped and then start a new recording for the next session, even if you're going to be in this room. We have one more session, and then we're going to have a lunch presentation as well. So I hope everyone is enjoying, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you so much to our presenter, Julia Laffoon-Jackson. It was a really great session. Thank you.
And thank you, Melissa, for moderating. I give you the Moderator of the Conference Award. I think you did a great job.
Thank you. You were too kind. It was really fun. And I learned quite a bit from your session. I really.
Oh, good, because I was worried that this wouldn't be helpful to you at all with nursing, but so I'm very glad that you
no, we are drowning
in
we are drowning at assignments in nursing. We are drowning. So yeah, any little tip to help make our drowning more like a life raft, we're happy for that.
Right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.